answer them as we go. And if you are, we save those questions for afterwards, and we'll ask Terri if they are unanswered. And if they are answered, we will ask them and we'll answer them. So that way it is recorded for the future. As you heard, there is a recording that is going on. So we make sure that we maintain that microphone being muted for an easy transfer throughout the presentation. And lastly, it wouldn't be a Woodland Wednesday without some jokes. So bear with me, I made them today. So I want to make sure that we have a good laugh before we start our bug presentation. So why don't invasive bugs in Ohio ever go to therapy? Because they're always feeling bugged out and rooted in their problems. What did the spotted lanternfly say when it moved to Ohio? I guess I'm branching out into new territory. Why did the emerald ash borer get hired as an Ohio tour guide? Because it knows all the best places to bore you. Why did the Asian longhorn beetle feel so at home in Ohio? It found the tree of life a maple of opportunities. What's the favorite hobby of the Ohio's invasive Japanese beetles? Chewing through leaves and leafing behind troubles. And then finally, what do invasive bugs in Ohio do at parties? They bug everyone until the host kicks them out. Ah, so much fun. Love my dad jokes. So with no further ado, Terri, if you want to take it away, we'll make sure that you are in full screen mode and you're good to go.
Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, thank you, Sean, and the Woodland Wednesday Planning Board, and all the supporting cooperative agencies who work to bring this Woodland Wednesday to their community, and allowing me to share this invasive species information. I appreciate it. But your dad jokes. Awesome. Okay. So before we jump into the whole invasive species thing, I wanted to briefly share who I work for and how my work applies to invasive species. So as Sean already alluded to, I work for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, better known as the USDA. And under the USDA, there are 29 agencies, one of which is the Animal Plant Health Inspection Service, which goes under the acronym APHIS. And under that APHIS agency, there are 6 programs, one of which is Plant Protection and Quarantine. The acronym is PPQ. And basically, the job of APHIS PPQ is to block the entry of invasive species, and if they do slip through, to respond rapidly and effectively to minimize the damage. And APHIS PPQ's #1 priority is keeping agricultural and natural resources, pests, and diseases out of the U.S. And so we receive that regulatory authority from Congress to minimize the risk of agricultural pests. That includes animals, plants, and pathogens from entering, establishing, or spreading through the U.S. Okay. And with that said, let's jump into the invasive species thing. Okay, so what is an invasive species? So invasive species are living organisms like plants, animals, and microorganisms that must fulfill 2 of the criteria listed on the slide. So the first of which is the non-native, that invasive species are non-native species to the area. So basically, they're organisms living in the area where they do not naturally exist. The second of the criteria is that the living organism causes harm to the economy and environment of the considered area. And so an invasive species has to fulfill both these criteria in order to be considered an invasive species. So non-native species and invasive species are often inaccurately interchangeable. Many commonly grown agriculture products are not native to the US, but are not invasive because they do not cause harm. So, for example, there are tomatoes and hot peppers that are native to South America. And then there's lettuce that were first grown by the Egyptians in North Africa, and domestic cows that are not native to North America were introduced as a food source and considered to be a beneficial organism in an agricultural setting. And so, what risks do invasive species pose to us? So, invasive species introduced to the US often have few or no natural predators in their new environment and can quickly spread, disrupting ecosystems by pushing out native species and reducing biological diversity. So, invasive species threaten our economy, our food supply, the environment, and in some cases, even public health. So significant crop losses can also result in the loss of hundreds of thousands of jobs. Plant pests jeopardize acceptance of our agricultural exports by other countries. And it's important to know that consumers will pay more for food and plant-derived goods when farmers lose crops to invasive plant pests. So what are the costs? What are the costs of invasive? So there is a real cost that is estimated around $40 billion to the introduction and or establishment of invasive agricultural pests. So these costs do include one, direct agricultural effects that include crop damage, lost revenue, and cleanup costs. Another one of these costs are agricultural management, and that involves managing invasive pests, requiring millions of dollars in research, development, and application of control technology. And so, lastly, there is the indirect costs, like I mentioned, of the closing of foreign markets to products from affected areas. So, so now that we've just covered the basic definitions and costs of broad invasive species subject, we're going to go into the specific pests themselves. So the first one that we'll jump into is a big one. It's the Asian longhorn beetle. So the Asian longhorn beetle, or ALB, as its acronym is an invasive insect that feeds on a wide variety of trees and that eventually the bug kills them. So if ALB were to become established here in the US, the beetle could become one of the most destructive and costly species ever to enter the country. The ALB threatens urban and suburban shade trees, recreational resources such as parks and forest resources, as well as wildlife. And it can also harm industries such as syrup production, hardwood lumber processing, nurseries, and tourism. So the Asian longhorn beetle is native to China and the Korean Peninsula, and is in the wood-boring family called Cerambycidae. The adult beetles are large, very distinctive-looking insects measuring anywhere from an inch to an inch and a half in length, very long antenna. Their bodies are shiny black with small white spots, and their antennae are banded in black and white. So what it comes down to is ALB, or Asian longhorn beetle, kills trees. Specifically, there are 12 known US host tree types that ALB infests and kills. And all the species of each of these 12 types is included in its host. So there are, of those 12 known hosts, the most common host groups are the maples, which include box elders, horse chestnuts, which include buckeyes, birches, willows, and elms. So, like I said, those are the primary hosts that we see Asian longhorn beetle infesting. But there's also less common but verified secondary hosts, which include the mimosa or silk tree, the katsura tree, your ashes, the London plane tree, poplar, the European mountain ash, and the golden rain tree. And specifically for Ohio, we see that over 98% of ALB infested trees in Ohio are maple. Right. Okay, so to understand why Asian longhorn beetle is such a major threat to the US, we need to understand its life cycle. So bear with me on the STEM biology stuff, but the Asian longhorn beetle has one generation per year. In warmer months when the adults are active, female beetles lay eggs just beneath the bark of a tree, and in about 2 weeks, those eggs hatch as larvae. The larvae feed into the tree and continue to grow, and eventually pupate. They'll get into that cocoon stage, and then adult beetles emerge from that pupation and tunnel out of the tree. And adult beetles can usually be seen in Ohio from about June through October. But they can be found later if the fall temperatures are warm enough, like they were last year and even this year as well. So one adult female can lay up to 90 eggs. So what I'm going to do is kind of go through the description of those life stages. So we'll start with the egg. It's the size of about a grain of rice. The color is milky white, and it is flat, almost like a cucumber seed. The eggs are laid just beneath the bark, like I mentioned, and grow in the growing layer of the tree. So the eggs hatch within a couple of weeks, about 10 to 15 days after they're laid. And then from the eggs, you'll get the early, middle, and late larval stages, or instars of the Asian longhorn beetle. So those larval stages, the larvae, are cream colored and grow to up to 2.5 inches long. The larvae feed deep inside the tree trunk and branches and create tunnels in the tree. This feeding and growing goes on for a few months. Then getting into the pupa stage. So this is where the Asian longhorn beetle develops from that caterpillar larval stage into the adult beetle form. So pupa are cream colored and are about 1.5 inches long, and they'll be in this life phase for anywhere from 13 to about 24 days. And finally, when you get to the very striking adult beetles, so adult Asian longhorn beetles have extremely long antennae, which is up to twice the length of their body. Their coloration is shiny black. The body coloration is shiny black, white spots, and oftentimes with ish feet. Adults are large beetle with a body length of about 1 to 1.5 inches. And adult beetles chew their way out of the tree from the pupation chamber, creating perfectly round exit holes. And once the beetle exits a tree, they feed on the leaves and bark before mating and laying eggs again, and then another generation of tree-killing beetles again. Okay, so I'm sure you're all familiar with the children's book, The Very Hungry Caterpillar. So it's the very hungry Asian longhorn beetle larva or caterpillar stage that's eating and multiplying in size that actually kills trees. So for ALB, an egg hatches and a larva emerges. And for the larva, and then the larva bores further into the tree, feeding on the tree's phloem and cambium layers, which are the living tissues of the tree that carries nutrients. And that's the layer responsible for new growth just under the bark. So after several weeks of feeding in this area, the larvae tunnel deeper into the tree where the woody tree tissue, also known as the xylem and heartwood, are. So these areas are where the tree gets most of its structure from, and where the Asian longhorn beetle larvae continue to feed and develop over time. So Asian longhorn beetle larvae molt and can go through as many as 12 growth phases just within the larval stage. So as the larvae feed and they form tunnels or galleries in the tree trunks and branches, tunneling in the living tissue restricts or prevents the tree from transporting necessary nutrients, the necessary nutrients it needs to live. And galleries in the woody center of the tree compromises the structural integrity of the trunk or branch and will cause it to break and fall. This sickened state of infested tree are definitely safety hazards, and branches can drop and trees can fall over, especially during storms. So it is very important to know that a tree infested with Asian longhorn beetle do not recover and will eventually die just because of damage the larva does to the tree. Okay, so we, meaning the USDA, has been battling Asian longhorn beetle for a while now. Nobody is exactly sure when the first Asian longhorn beetle arrived here in the US, but from the dating work we've done, we estimate that it arrived in New York sometime in the 1980s. The initial US discovery was in Brooklyn, New York, in August of 1996. And since that initial find, AOB populations have been found in Illinois, Ohio, more in New York, Massachusetts, Jersey, and South Carolina. And as far as we know, all known US infestations are thought to have originated from imported woodpacking materials. So that includes pallets and crates from foreign countries. So there are 4 current ALB infestations, one in central Long Island, New York, one in Worcester County, Massachusetts, one in Claremont County, Ohio, and one in Charleston County, and one in Dorchester County, South Carolina. Both Charleston and Dorchester County are in South Carolina. There is an infestation in Ontario, Canada as well, but for our purposes, we're going to focus on the US infestation. It is worth mentioning, though, that the Chicago, Illinois, and New Jersey populations were eradicated by the USDA and other cooperative state agencies in the past. So these eradication examples gives us hope that we can win the battle against Asian longhorn beetle if we put the resources and efforts into basically the fight Asian longhorn beetle war. So basically, we need your help. You can help fight against the Asian longhorn beetle by checking trees on your property or in your community by looking for the adult beetle and for signs of Asian longhorn beetle damage. So the round depressions or holes in trees, solid dust material on the ground or branches will be the easiest to see right now because it's getting cold, all the leaves are off the tree, and there are no leaves to inhibit you looking at the upper branches or block any signs of Asian longhorn beetle that might be tree. Okay, so the things that we're asking you to look for is one of the things is tree damage, which you can see around, and it's, like I said, especially right now because there's no leaves on the tree. So a big one is the round exit. The exit holes are approximately ½ inch or larger in diameter, and they'll be in tree trunks and branches. And usually the holes are about the size of a dime or a little bit small. Then there are the egg sites. And so those are oval or round crater-shaped wounds that are chewed into the bark. And sometimes you may see sap weeping from those chewed areas. There's also sawdust-like material called frass, which basically is caterpillar poop. Frass is found in the ground around the tree or sometimes in crevices on tree branches. Another thing to notice are like branches or tree limbs that fall from an otherwise healthy looking tree. Another thing to look for, tunneling in the wood can be seen in fallen branches, cut wood, or freshly cut fire. And leaves of infested trees could also turn yellow prematurely, and the leaves could also have chewed veins from adult feeding. So the more obvious sign of an Asian longhorn beetle infestation is an adult beetle. But this is usually during the warmer months of summer or early fall. So adult Asian longhorn beetles, like I said, are black, have black and white antennae that are longer than the insect's body. The body itself is shiny, black with white spots and about the size of an almond. And the Asian longhorn beetle has 6 legs and feet that can appear bluish in color. So if you see an Asian longhorn beetle, adult, or suspect that there is tree damage and is caused by Asian longhorn beetle, please report it by calling the hotline at 1-866-702-9938 for old school people like me who still use a telephone, or you can go online and fill out the reported form at www.asianlonghornbeetle.com. Okay. So people often say that a picture is worth 1,000 words. However, a video is probably worth 1,000 pictures. So I have this video to better show you what you're looking for.
The beetle is going to draw your eye. You would be surprised by the magnificent coloration of this beetle and the iridescent blue colors and everything we are getting around the tarsal segments, but just this bright onyx, the black coloration with the white spots, very, very showy that it can become camouflaged against a tree. It seems almost impossible with the striated antenna, with the coloration that it can, but actually with its coloration is very, very adept at camouflaging itself up against the tree. Oftentimes, if you're looking for adults, the thing that you're going to see even more than the body is the actual movement of the antenna because they are so large. You can see on this little male that is actively trying to open up and fly that what an Asian longhorn beetle looks like. You will be able to see these when they're out in the summer months. So they do emerge in some zones of North America where Asian longhorn beetle has been found in mid-June to early July and other zones where you actually see these adults out and active.
And hey, Terry, just for those who might have not been able to hear the video, could you just do a quick recap? I know that he was talking about the time frames with the months that they come out versus when they're inside the tree. Could you just go over that real quick for anybody who couldn't hear?
Sure. So
Oop, oop. Hold on, Terry, you got muted there. There we go.
Okay. Yeah, so for Ohio specifically, June, late June or July is when you'll see the adult beetle. And August is, more of a time where they'll be more active. But basically, you'll see them late June, July, August, maybe even September. It can go all the way to the winter months, depending how warm it gets. Basically, when it gets cold, they're not good at they're not good with cold weather, basically. Alrighty, so we'll jump to our next invasive pest, which is the box tree moth. So the box tree moth is a newer and notable invasive species because box tree moths can significantly damage and kill Buxus species plants. And Buxus species plants are basically more commonly known as boxwood. So the box tree moth is native to temperate and subtropical areas in East Asia, and it is already a serious invasive pest in both Europe and Canada where it continues to spread. So why do we care about box tree moth or boxwood? So basically, most of us have used or seen boxwood plants used as common landscaping plants. And boxwoods are a group of evergreen landscape shrubs that are popular hedges or foundation plantings, topiaries, accents. And you may not know it by name, but it's very likely you've seen a boxwood before. So that's that green plant at the center bottom of this slide. So boxwood plants are the top selling evergreen shrub in the US. It's an industry valued at an estimated $141 million annually in the US, and estimated that 12 million boxwood plants are sold each year just in the US. So statistical data from 2019, so it's a little dated, about 5 years old, but statistical data from 2019 indicated that sale of boxwood plants, specifically in Ohio alone, accounted for over $15 million. So invasive species like boxwood moth, box tree moth can definitely affect the economy and the industry just in Ohio. So detection and control of this invasive pest that damages and kills boxwood plants is necessary to maintain this thriving industry, both in Ohio as well as the US. Okay, so once again, we have to go back to the biological life cycle of the pest to understand why they're bad and why we care. So we need to, let's see, basically box tree moths are prolific breeders. So adult females lay either single or lay eggs singly or in clusters of about 5 to more than 20 eggs in a gelatinous mass on boxwood. And most females deposit more than 42 egg masses in their lifetime. The eggs typically hatch within 4 to 6 days of laying, in which the larvae emerge from eggs and overwinter in those larval stages. So when temperatures become warm in the spring, caterpillars continue through those 7 larval stages, which take approximately 4 weeks before they go into pupation. Specifically for Ohio, pupae may first appear in June and are present continuously through the summer and into the fall, depending on the local climate and timing of the generation. And pupation takes around 1 week before they emerge as adult moths. So adults first emerge from the overwintering generations starting late June into July. Depending on the climate and temperature, always the warmer it is, the sooner they develop. And subsequent generations are active between July and October. So adults are nocturnal and typically live for 2 weeks after emergence. And then females can start laying eggs as soon as 2 days after they begin flying. And then eggs hatch after 3 days. And it takes, in total, it takes about 40 to 45 days to complete a single generation, again, dependent on the temperature. Multiple life stages may occur simultaneously depending on the environmental conditions. And specifically in Ohio, we've observed 3 to 5 generations of box tree moths may occur each year. Okay, so once again, we go back to the very hungry caterpillar. So box tree moth larvae or caterpillars are ravenous feeders. And this is the life stage responsible for boxwood damage as well as death. So the box tree moth caterpillars feed mostly on boxwood. Heavy infestations completely foliate plants. Once the leaves are gone, the larvae start consuming bark and leading to girdling or cutting off nutrients and thus the plant death. So the voracious appetite of box tree moth caterpillars is necessary to allow completion of 7 instar stages of larval development, from the early larval stage at a few millimeters to the last larval stage that can be up to 1.5 inches. So natural movement of box tree moth occurs during the adult life stage. They're moths, they can fly, and box tree moths are good flyers, and can spread naturally anywhere from 3 to 6 miles per year. The longer distance movement likely occurs due to human transport of boxwood planting that are infested with eggs or hibernating larvae. For the first North American discovery of box tree moth was in Toronto, Canada, Ontario, Canada, in August of 2018. But then in 2021, the USDA confirmed the first US detection in Niagara County, New York, which is in a location that was directly across, basically adjacent to the Canadian border infestation. Subsequent US detections occurred in Michigan in 2022, then Massachusetts and Ohio in 2023, and hot off the press, Erie County, Pennsylvania, and the entire state of Delaware just declared quarantine areas for box tree moth last week on December 4th. So please excuse the hand-drawn red areas, hand-colored areas on the map showing Erie County, Pennsylvania, and Delaware. The announcement was so new about these areas that there's no official map that was available for this presentation. So specifically for Ohio, currently the counties of Butler, Claremont, Hamilton, Warren, and parts of Greene and Montgomery counties are regulated under the box tree moth quarantine. The Ohio Department of Agriculture is encouraging landscapers and residents in these counties to check the current quarantine boundaries and not transport plants outside of the quarantine area. Okay, so we are asking for your help. We're asking you to become familiar with the box tree moth life stages and infestation symptoms to help locate, manage, and report unidentified box tree moth infestation. The only way we will reduce the spread of this pest is if we all do our part to identify populations and manage its proliferation. So adult moths, as seen in the two central photos, are active at night and generally have white bodies with a brown head and abdomen. Their wings are white and slightly iridescent with an irregular, thick brown border, and the wingspan is about 1.5 to 1 3/4 inches. Another less common variation of adult moth have completely brown wings with a small white streak on each forewing. Males and females both show those color variations. Newly hatched larvae have black heads and are yellowish green to yellow color. And as they age, dark brown stripes develop on their body. The most mature larvae, as seen in the upper left corner photo, are about 1.5 inches long, thin white, thick black stripes, and black dots outlined in white along the length of the body. It's a lime green caterpillar with black stripes, white spots, hairs, and a shiny black head. You can find caterpillars hiding in boxwood twigs and as well as their leaves. So the pupa or pupae, as seen in the upper right corner photo, may be wrapped in webbing, develop inside a silk cocoon, and are anywhere from 0.6 to 0.8 inches long. They are initially green with black stripes on their back, turn brown as they mature. And as far as boxwood plants, so if boxwood plants do have box tree moth infestations, they display symptoms like brown leaves, defoliation, or webbing. Also, there are missing sections of leaves or skeletonized leaves, indicating feeding by larvae. Sometimes you will be able to see larval frass, or like I mentioned before, basic caterpillar poop, which is sawdust-like excrement from the insects. It may be present, but difficult to see. They're smaller caterpillars, smaller poop. So management of the box tree moth. For management of box tree moth, We know that insecticides known to be effective against defoliating caterpillars have been shown to be effective against the box tree moth caterpillar as well. It is important for everyone to consider treating or trimming an infested boxwood plant because failure to do so either can lead to the shrub's death in a year or less. So box tree moth won't just eat the leaves, but they'll eat the bark once all the leaves are gone, and that'll again girdle it and kill the boxwood. What we are recommending to people is that every place is kind of different as far as what is allowed or what is best for your area. So you can contact your local extension office for information on the most effective method for treating or trimming your specific boxwoods. But one of the general things that we can suggest is pruning to remove portions of the shrub that are displaying signs of box tree moth presence. And that's an option for light infestations. However, for heavy infestations, you can cut the boxwood basically at its base. It may grow back, it may not, depending on the health of the plant itself, but it is possible to just cut it at the bottom. A healthy plant could grow back from that base. And to avoid spreading box tree moth to new areas, we ask that you discard all boxwood debris that you trim or cut by double bagging it in plastic, disposing of it with your household trash, and that's if your local, if it's allowed by your local government to do. So for box tree moth in Ohio, we ask that you report any suspect specimens or symptoms to the Ohio Plant Pest Reporter at, this is not the best, most friendly website address, but the Ohio Plant Pest Reporter can be found at https://arcg.is/14NDAH. We'll have that address through at the end of this presentation, and then we'll have it available for Sean or for Woodland Wednesdays to post as well. Okay, so that was box tree moth, and we're on to, I feel, the prettiest of the invasive species we'll talk about today. So we're on to the spotted lanternfly. So despite its name, the spotted lanternfly is not a fly. It's a plant hopper insect that is native to Asia. So the spotted lanternfly is an invasive plant hopper that feeds on a wide range of plants, including grapes, hops, stone fruit, and hardwood trees, including apples, walnuts, and oaks. So its preferred host, though, is the invasive tree of heaven, or Aelandis altissima. And when the spotted lanternfly feeds, it excretes a sticky, sugary fluid that causes sooty mold, which can further damage. So the spotted lanternfly is a hitchhiking pest. Adult females lay eggs on any outdoor hard surface. And that includes grills, vehicles, trailers, firewood, outdoor furniture, bikes, and toys, anything that's outside. Spotted lanternfly was discovered for the first time in the US in September of 2014 in Berks County, Pennsylvania. It likely arrived in the United States on goods shipped from overseas. So in October of 2020, Ohio had its first spotted lanternfly detection in Mingo Junction in Jefferson County. So I have to say that the bad news about spotted lanternfly is that it's here in the US, it's here in Ohio, and eradication is not possible. However, we can learn more about it, slow its spread to new areas, develop methods to manage and control its harms, and learn how to coexist. Okay, so again, we have to go to the life cycle of the pest. And so female adult lay eggs in October through December. And newly laid egg masses each hold about 30 to 50 eggs, and they resemble wet gray putty when they're first laid before turning a dull kind of brown color, mirroring a smear of cracked mud, basically. The egg masses are 1 inch long and can be seen now in the fall. Can be seen year round, but in a variety of smooth surfaces. And so egg masses can be found on trees, bricks, stones, fences, grills, equipment, and vehicles. So the spotted lanternfly overwinters as egg masses from the previous fall to April. And this is the key life stage to look for over the current cold months that we're in right now. So egg masses basically look like a smear of mud, and those eggs will be on outdoor items, like I said, camping equipment, patio furniture, even the wheel wells of cars. So it's important to look for those egg masses, and smash and scrape them to prevent their movement or hatching in the spring. Okay, so spotted lanternfly eggs will begin hatching in April to early instar nymphs or caterpillars and go through 4 nymph stages, sometimes lasting through August. So the nymphs will begin at 1/8 inch long-ish, and for the first, and then, sorry, let me back up. So the nymphs will go through 4 nymph stages, and that'll last through August. The first early instar will begin at 1/8 inch long, and the first 3 nymph stages have black bodies with white spots. They'll maintain this coloration while going through the first 3 nymph stages, and you can see them in these stages through July. So the 4th instar nymph is seen around July through August. This late instar nymph is approximately 1/2 inch long and has a red body with white dots and black stripes. So the adult lanternflies start to appear in late June and will be active until the winter, basically, until the major freeze. So the adult spotted lanternfly is roughly 1 inch long and 1/2 inch wide, have a yellow, black barred abdomen and brightly colored wings. So they have brown forewings with black spots at the front and a speckled band at the rear, and their hind wings are scarlet with black spots at the front and white and black bars at the rear. Pictures is worth 1,000 words, so rather than all that color description. But basically, they're very colorful, and if you like bugs, it's a very pretty bug. So why is spotted lanternfly so destructive? What threat do they pose? So the first threat is direct feeding damage to trees and plants. So the SLF adults and nymphs use their piercing, sucking mouth parts to tap into the phloem, or when we talked about, that's where the nutrient transfer occurs of trees and plants. So large numbers of spotted lanternfly can remove large quantities of sap that weaken the tree and plants. And the spotted lanternfly feeding holes remain free-flowing, allowing phloem sap to leak long after the spotted lanternflies leave. So the combined sap sucking and sap seeping can cause heavily infested trees to lose its necessary nutrients, thus weakening the tree and plants enough to be susceptible to environmental stresses or disease, thus killing. SLF damages plants as it sucks sap from its branches, stems, and tree trunk. So the second threat of spotted lanternfly is the public nuisance aspect. So while feeding on sap, spotted lanternfly excretes a sticky, sugary fluid called honeydew, and which promotes mold growth and further weakens plants and puts our agriculture at risk. So imagine hundreds of spotted lanternflies expelling a drizzle of sticky excrement onto your lawn, ornamental plants, garden ornaments, and outdoor fire pit area, blackening the surface with stinky fermented honeydew and promoting the growth of mold. It's a scenario that SLF infested areas of Pennsylvania that homeowners and farmers in those areas have been experiencing for years. And the sugary honeydew also attracts stinging insects like wasps that pose health safety hazards to people around it. There's also spotted lanternfly swarming during mating season, and that tends to gross people out who are uncomfortable with insects. So I do have a video as an example.
Yeah, that's a video of 1,000 pictures, right?
Yes. Oh man. So finally, there is the expense of time and resources paid by businesses, organizations, and the public to comply with quarantine ordinances and mitigate the spread of SLF. So that's the regulatory compliance aspect. So the Ohio Department of Agriculture first announced quarantine in October of 2021 to combat the spread of spotted lanternfly. And now SLF is designated a destructive plant pest under Ohio law. So that increases inspections and restricts movement of certain items from infested counties in Ohio and other states into non-infested. So just a heads up, regulated articles under Ohio law include but are not limited to one, obviously spotted lanternflies and any other living stage of development. Two, live or dead trees, nursery stock, firewood, logs, perennial plants, garden plants, and agricultural produce. And three, the all-encompassing other products or articles or means of conveyance that may carry spotted lanternfly. So producers who ship regulated articles from regulated areas to non-regulated areas must have their stock inspected, and each load must be accompanied by a certificate to the fact that their product is free of SLF. Bear with me, almost done. So SLF is spotted lanternfly is currently confirmed in 18 US states. Georgia is the most recently added. It was added last week when adults and egg masses were confirmed in Atlanta. So the 18 states include Connecticut, Delaware, Georgia, Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, Tennessee, Virginia, and West Virginia. And specifically in Ohio, there are 12 counties under state regulatory quarantine. So those counties include Lucas, Ottawa, Erie, Lorain, Cuyahoga, Mahoning, Columbiana, Jefferson, Hamilton, Franklin, Muskingum, and Belmont. So if you look at the map that I have up, it does show that there are reports of spotted lanternfly in a lot more counties than what I just mentioned. However, there needs to be multiple life stages confirmed in a county to be able to designate it quarantine area. So we, the USDA, are working with state and tribal cooperators to detect, control, and manage the spotted lanternfly population in the United States. So, because if spotted lanternfly is allowed to spread, this pest could impact our country's fruit, ornamental, and forest industry. So early detection is critical to prevent the economic and ecological losses. And you, the public, has played a key role in detecting the spotted lanternfly. Stopping its spread depends on help from the public to look for and report the signs of pests. Okay, so ways that you can help control spotted lanternfly populations and slow the spread include not moving outdoor lawn furniture, gardening equipment, or firewood without first inspecting the items for spotted lanternfly life stages. If you are moving to a new area, check to see that you are required to follow quarantine regulations in Ohio or any other state. Another thing you could do is for that egg masses may be destroyed prior to nymphs emerging, resulting in a reduction in nymphs for the following season. So you can, if you see an egg mass, you can scrape them with a knife or the edge of a credit card into soapy water. Basically, I use dish soap or rubbing alcohol, and that'll kill it. Egg masses can be treated with horticultural oils during the winter months or before bud break in the spring. And if populations are low, acceptable control methods can be achieved by swatting or stomping on nymphs and adults when you see them. So basically, you see them, squash them. And removing favored spotted lanternfly hosts, some of which are invasive themselves, namely tree of heaven or ailanthus, and grapevine, for instance, can result in the reduction of spotted lanternfly populations on the property. The use of lower toxicity insecticides such as horticultural oils and insecticidal soaps can provide control of nymphs and adults with little residual activity. However, these products likely need to be reapplied through the season. Contact insecticides such as bifenthrin, carbaryl, and malathion can be used as spot treatments against nymphs and adults, but this too, you'll also need repeat treatments. And there's also the option of systematic insecticide treatment of dinotefuran or imidacloprid that can be used as chunk sprays or chunk injections or soil drenches, depending on the label, and that may provide a little bit more prolonged protection. So the bottom line is, if you see any, if you could please report any observations of Asian longhorn beetle, boxwood moth, or spotted lanternfly specimens or infestation symptoms to the Ohio Pest Plant Reporter at that website, basically rg.is/14ndh. That would be really helpful for us in Ohio. Or you can go to the USDA's hungrypests.com website for more information on these as well as other invasive plant pests. And there's also information on who to contact in Ohio or other states to report your observation. And that's it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Terri. So, couple of notes, if you guys have any questions, and thank you for everybody who's, monitoring and putting information in the chat. Really appreciate that. A couple things that come to note too, like let's go back to the Asian longhorn beetle, right? We were talking about before we started the presentation about how it's a very lazy bug and most invasive pests tend to be lazy. So the question that most people have is, how do these pests get transferred so vastly across the country, right? Like the Asian longhorn beetle is in Cincinnati's area in Bethel, and it was projected to be found in New Jersey. So it's like, how does it get all the way over there? And thinking of things, we talk about this from the U.S. Forest Service, transferring things like logs, firewood. These are very important minor things that we don't think about, but that's why we keep firewood where it goes, right? We keep it where it's at to prevent that transfer, because like the Asian longhorn beetle, it uses the wind to help get it to its next host. So that obviously, for most of you, that's a pretty lazy mode of transportation to rely on and to worry about. So when it comes to that, we got to think about that. And, it's important to note too, in Ohio, we have such a vast private land ownership, that it does end up relying on our private landowners to do some mitigation if ODA or your local resource groups aren't able to get out to your property to look. And so my advice, just because I have done research with ODA on mitigation of the Asian longhorn beetle, is invest in some binoculars because they do like to burrow into the tops of your trees. Like if you're looking at your maples, which is one of the most important um, hosts for them, you got to look for that frass, that excrement, and then identify that. And the best thing to do is reach out to your local resource, whether it's soil and water, whether it's ODA or OSU Extension, and try to get them out there or get them the pest, a sample of the pest so that they can identify it and help give you the resources that you need to resolve it. As far as the spotter and lanternfly, we can see in that image of the maps the fact that it's in very transportation hubs, right? We see Pittsburgh. I know if you're from Pennsylvania, you probably were exposed to spotter and lanternfly before us in Ohio in the Pittsburgh area. I had friends that were telling me that they were stomping on this bug. They like those flat surfaces. Well, what's the perfect flat surface? A truck bed, right? One of those truck containers. And I know that we saw it on 46 over in Austintown. We saw the spotter and lanternfly getting off, like they hitched a ride, they got off the trucks, and now we do have to worry about those things. And you also made a point too about focusing on maybe some of the opportunistic native species plants that we have here, like that grapevine, that can become very opportunistic and take over your woodlands. And maybe that's not something that you want as a landowner, but that also becomes a nice a source for the spotter and lanternfly. So maybe if you don't have other fruiting trees that you don't have to be worried about with the spotter and lanternfly, getting rid of that grapevine can be a big help to not only you but your neighbors. So definitely keeping those things in line. One of the questions that we did get was just to grasp your knowledge on this, Terri, in the chat. We had an individual, James, who found a similar looking bug to the Asian longhorn beetle, but it turned out to be the European longhorn beetle. So he was just curious as far as how much of a threat does the Europeans longhorn beetle pose to the U.S. if you happen to know that. I do know that we have longhorn beetles that are native to our area, and some of them are nectar collectors, or they go and they actually take into the tree, which is why the Asian longhorn beetle is so problematic, because it actually burrows into all of the preventing nutrients from going up into the top of the canopy. So could you elaborate on that?
I'll be honest, I'm not familiar with specifically the European longhorn beetle. So I can't attest to that. But I will say, so we the cooperative partnership between Ohio Department of Agriculture as well as USDA. So we will respond to all reports of people suspecting that it's Asian longhorn. So we do see a lot of lookalikes when we do go to those places. And then, so just for general information for everyone, like some of the common lookalikes, native lookalikes that we have here is the cottonwood borer, as well as the white spotted pine sawyer, or white spotted pine sawyer is another one. And they're part of that Cerambycidae family with the so they have the long antenna, and they're big beetles where they're walking by, you can't not see them because they're so huge. So there's that aspect where there's a lot of native lookalikes, but we respond to every single report of possible Asian longhorn beetle, because we don't want to miss that one, that it could be either signs or symptoms, or actual people catch the bug or send us photos of it. So if if people ever find something, definitely report it. Even if you're like, it's probably not, that's okay. We'll take a look at it and verify that it's not or that it is. So that's one aspect of it. And then the second aspect is that, we do, as the USDA, as I said, the program that I work for, the first priority is to just try and keep the bug out of the US. So we do see a lot of single, either hitchhiker or imported material that has a bug, and one of these invasive insects or plants or fed on noxious weeds or things like that. And so basically, we meaning the US, are constantly innovating with shipments of basically invasive pests all the time. We, meaning Customs and Border Protection with the Department of Homeland Security, as well as the USDA, are doing our best to try and keep them out. But really, on a daily basis, there are bugs that are, invasive pests having the opportunity to come in with just loads and loads of imported material. So very possible for that European longhorn beetle. I apologize though I don't know about that.
Yeah, I tried to look into it too, James, and a lot of things that were coming up was just the subgroups of the species of the longhorn beetle. And so that's the biggest issue with the Asian longhorn beetle, is specifically how it burrows in, which prevents those nutrients to go up. And like Terry mentioned before, the tree dies. There is no saving it after that process has been completed throughout its life cycle, right? And I think that you alluded to something very important too. This is where, having regulations, because we are so involved in global trade, of monitoring those pallets that come in, right? Pallets tend to be the worst wood of the forests that are used to transport goods. And so when you think of the worst, well, things are going to hitch rides in that as well. So having the regulations that we have on monitoring things that are coming in can help be a preventative measure. May not prevent them from coming in, but at least we know things are here and we have to put forth the groups to do those monitoring and help mitigate that. Something, with the boxwood moth or tree moth, this is where we have to focus on, in my opinion, some other alternatives too, right? We see with monocultures that when you have that and everybody wants it, it's a great landscape tree, but then when everybody gets it and then we see this pest comes in, what do we see? But we see them all being eradicated at one point in time. And this is why with the spotted lanternfly, with apple orchards, or all the grapevines for the wineries or hops like these, that's a large, not so diverse field or orchard. So when these guys come in, they're going to eradicate everything, and they can cause so much havoc that we have to worry about. So those are things to keep in mind. And I say, when in doubt, catch it. If you don't want to catch it, stomp on it and kill it. Get rid of it, especially with the spotted lanternfly. I know that there's not much that we can do as far as the population density that's happening with them, but you can always kill it on site. And if you have questions about it, I always say capture one and take it to your soil and water. Take it to your ODA office or your Ohio State Extension. They're happy to identify these things. I'm sure, Terry, that you've heard about the Asian hornet that has been coming here, and people are mistaking that for the European hornet, or they're mistaking the European hornet for the Asian hornet. And so we haven't seen it here in Ohio. I think that the last time I checked, it was out in Washington was where they found it, out in the West. So we haven't seen it here, but I had many people, actually in one week, I had 3 people bring in a hornet trying to make sure that it wasn't. And, happy to say it's not. And we collaborate with other entities too to make sure that we're getting the most accurate identifications for you guys. But that's also a resource for you if you're worried or concerned. I always say take pictures, but having an organism might be the easiest way for us to identify it for you. ODA has multiple um, ways to track and survey landowners. So they have QR codes all around. We have one out in our office that you can take a picture of, and it will send you right to that tracker. Some of the websites that Terri had posted, we will make sure that those are on the resource list. They're in our chat as well. So keep that in mind too. You can always go onto these websites and report them. And like she said too, it's important for you guys to remember, just because there's a map and USDA and ODA and other resource groups are doing their due diligence on trying to create these maps for us to know where they're located. Just because it's not located in your area doesn't mean it's not there, right? I know that the spotted lanternfly, they said that it wasn't here in Trumbull County for so long, but I myself have seen it, and I've heard other people say that they've seen it. Same thing with in the Cleveland area. Before it got there, people just saw one or two and didn't think any of it. So keep that in mind as you guys are coming across these bugs. Identifying it is key, because with pathogens and bugs, if we don't know and we don't have it registered, there's a possible chance that it might go unseen, and then it could get even more crazy. And then,
As far as I know, all the I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure all the Asian longhorn beetle infestations found in the U.S. were found by public. We're trying our due diligence to look for them as part of our job. But for instance, there's four officers, inclusive of myself, for the whole state of Ohio, trying to look up for these things. The general regulatory officers. So, we rely on the public, who are not only one interested in learning about things like invasive species, but then reporting it and being vigilant about, looking around, doing the observations necessary to be able to spot something different or something not right.
yeah, 100%. And also something that we were chatting about before the presentation, and things to keep in mind too, guys. If you're from the northeastern Ohio area, you see the climate variability that we have now, the lack of snowy winters that we have seen in our past. These are things to keep in mind as we're going further and further. Like in South Carolina with the Asian longhorn beetle, that is such an issue because of the warm climate that they have there that prolongs that period. If we have that period prolonged, if we see warmer longer time frames here in Ohio, in northeastern Ohio, well, we have a big maple population. We got a lot of producers. If you guys joined us last month, we did a Woodland Wednesday at a maple farm, and these are the people who could be heavily impacted by something like that. And that's something to take in mind. We love our syrup. We love our organic syrup, and we want to keep and maintain that. So if that bug comes in, I know landowners who had hundreds and hundreds of maples. It wasn't just one infested tree that was removed. It was all of their maples had to be removed by ODA. And luckily, they were able to collaborate. But like you said, if it wasn't for the landowner going to ODA, how many more maples within the Claremont County area would have been targeted by this pest? And then, that prolongs the mitigation efforts that have to take place as well. So keeping that in mind is super important. And, thank you guys for and commenting in the chat. It seems here someone had a spawner lanternfly land on their suitcase at the Pittsburgh airport. Yeah, so it's probably trying to put some eggs on there for you to transport. Hopefully you were able to get it off or kill it. Let's see, Natalie, thank you for posting. There's the hornet map for the Asian hornet. Let's see here. We posted some of the common lookalikes that you could see from the Asian longhorn beetle. I have to say I've rarely came across it physically. I've never really seen it up close. It was always away. It was always up in the treetops. So that's something to keep in mind too. Sometimes it's not like the spotted lanternfly where it's on the sidewalk and you're able to get it. So if you are in those areas that you know for sure it's been exposed, definitely keep your eyes out, and then obviously contact your resource groups, and I know that they'll get you in the right direction. If they're not able to help you on the ground, they'll get you to the person that you do need. I know ODA had been going out all over the Bethel, Claremont County area with the Asian longhorn beetle. So that's important to note too. Um, Real quick, I also wanted to give a shout out to Natalie Gertz Young. She is my co-host from Lake Soil and Water Conservation District. She had been monitoring the chats, responding to people and posting links. Thank you so much, Natalie, for doing that. And then again, Terri, for those of you who got in late, she is the plant health safeguarding specialist with the USDA APHIS PPQ. So we are very, very happy for Terri to have joined us. Thank you so much for all that information. Happy to send people your way if they need more information about the pests. And then to put a little blurb in there for all of you Woodland Wednesday enthusiasts, we do have a program next month. It's an in-person program at the Holden Arboretum. And Natalie will be hosting that program. Leaves are for chumps, so leaf identification in the winter months where it might not be the easiest to identify your trees. We're going to go in and deep dive into identification and how to identify that. And I'm actually going to go ahead and put that link in there. So if you do want to register now, you're more than happy to. Oh, Natalie beat me to it. All right, so that's in the chat too. So if you want to get registered for it, please do so. It will also be in our blast emails and our, in our buildings and in our information sections, as well as our various social media pages. It's important to note this was a recorded video, so if you are interested in revisiting our video, please do so. That is on the Northeastern Farm Bureau's YouTube channel. We appreciate you guys coming in and, getting back into some more information if you need so. And please be on the lookout if you're interested in learning more about invasive pests. I know that many soil and waters, including ours here in Trumbull, are going to be doing more programs on all the invasive bugs and kind of deep dive in that as well. So we appreciate you guys, building your knowledge, and we hope for one day, maybe getting rid of some of these pests, right? I mean, at least with the Asian longhorn beetle, they've successfully eradicated it in Illinois and New Jersey. I feel like that one we can get, and then maybe we'll just focus on mitigation with the spotted lanternfly. Oh, and something else I wanted to talk about too. Terri was bringing up the monetary, financial insecurities around invasive pests, right? And I was just looking up EAB. This is the emerald ash borer, for those of you who don't know. That was an estimated cost in Ohio alone from $2 to almost $8 billion is what damage that has done yearly from that pest there. So just to think about those numbers, that is a lot of devastation that had to happen to get that amount. And it's important to note that with that, we have to be, we have to mitigate, and we have to worry and keep that concern in our back of our minds, because especially with the spotted lanternfly, we got a lot of agricultural plants that could be subjected to this pest. And we don't want any of that to happen, because that can cause a lot of issues with our supply chains, with our food. We all like our apples, and we all like our grapes, and we like our wine, we like our beer. So we don't want this bug going on and killing all these plants. So please keep your eyes out for it and reach out to those entities. We're happy to get you in the right direction and get you the resources. So for everybody who had an email in, I will make sure that I get you all of the resources in the next couple of days. So again, thank you, Terri, for joining us. We really appreciate that. If we have no other questions, um, I am happy to call it early. But again, thank you so much for joining, Terri. Thank you for everybody who participated and chatted with us in the chat. We really appreciate y'all. So thank you so much. And if you have any questions, I'll be on a little bit longer. I'm happy to answer those. Oh, you got a lot of thanks in the chat, Terri. So thanks from Gail and Amy. Uh, Natalie said, great job. Oh, so nice. See here. What else do we have? Let's see. Excellent job, said Judy. Thanks, Judy. Um, Carolyn, very helpful information. Chuck, thank you so much. Oh, we really appreciate all of thanks, guys. Yes, thank you, Chuck. Thanks, Darlene. All right, guys. Well, we'll see you again in the future. Thank you so much, and have a warm night. I know that it's supposed to get cold, so make sure that you guys stay warm out there. All right now.